The first glare of the mining colony was always loud, filled with the hum of machines and the clanging of metal. But today, everything seemed quieter, as if the air itself was waiting for something to happen. Jake stood near the broken power conduit. Tools in his hand, sweat running down his back. He had been fixing wires since morning. Trying to restore power to the north section, that was when he felt it, a presence. It wasn't just someone watching him, it was heavier, sharper, like a laser sight locked on his back. Slowly, he turned. And that's when he saw her. She stood. Across the dusty yard, tall and commanding, her skin shimmered faintly under the pale sunlight, scales catching the light like tiny pieces of silver. Her hair, if it could be called that, was a smooth, dark mane that flowed down her back, ending just above a long, sleek tail that swayed slowly from side to side. Her eyes were golden, and right now they were locked on him with a glare so cold it made his stomach twist. Every miner nearby froze. A few whispered under their breath, "It's her." The commander? Jake had heard of her, the alien commander who ruled the guard forces of the colony with an iron hand. Her name was unpronounceable in human language, but the miners called her the Serpent Empress because of the way her tail moved, sharp and unpredictable. They also said she hated humans, and that those who angered her were never seen again. She started walking toward him. Jake's pulse quickened. Her boots crunched softly on the gravel, and with each step, the air seemed to grow heavier. The crowd that had been working nearby slowly backed away, leaving Jake standing alone. He quickly checked the conduit, wondering if he had accidentally damaged something important. Maybe she was here about the power outage, but no. Her glare wasn't about broken wires. It was personal. "Human," she said, her voice low and dangerous. Each word felt like a blade. "You are in my sector." Jake swallowed hard. "I was just fixing. Did I give you permission?" She interrupted. Her tail flicked sharply behind her, the tip curling like it was ready to strike. He shook his head. "No." "But the power, do not speak," she ordered. Her eyes narrowed, studying him as if he was a strange insect. The miners, watching from a distance, looked tense. One of them muttered, "Poor fool, he's done for." Jake felt a prickle of anger in his chest. He didn't like being spoken to like a child. But something in her stare kept him from saying anything. Foolish. Her steps slowed as she came within a few feet of him. Her shadow fell over him. Her tail swayed once more. Brushing lightly against his boot, the contact was strange, warm, alive, and almost electric. For a moment, Jake thought about stepping back, but something stubborn inside him told him not to move. Her voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. "You look at me as if you are not afraid." Jake's heart pounded. "Maybe I'm not," he said before he could stop himself. The corner of her mouth twitched. But it wasn't a smile. It was something else. The wind picked up slightly, carrying the scent of metal and dust. The other miners had stopped pretending to work. Their eyes darted between Jake and the commander. Waiting to see who would make the next move, she leaned in, just slightly, her golden eyes unblinking. "Then you are either very brave or very foolish." Jake didn't answer. His fingers tightened around his tool. Not as a weapon, but because his hands needed something to do. She seemed to notice. Her tail's tip curled upward, swaying lazily, yet somehow feeling like a coiled snake ready to strike. The tension between them was thick, and Jake could almost hear his own heartbeat echoing in his ears. He had no idea why she was so angry, but he knew this wasn't a simple misunderstanding. This was something deeper, something dangerous. "Come," she said finally, turning away. Without waiting for his reply, her tail swished once more, brushing against his leg as she passed. A strange shiver ran through him. He stood frozen for a moment, wondering if following her was a good idea. But every instinct told him that refusing might be far worse, and so, under the silent gaze of the other miners, Jake followed the alien commander into the shadows of the fortress walls, his mind racing. His chest tight. He didn't know it yet, but this would be the moment that changed everything. The corridor inside the alien fortress was silent except for the echo of their footsteps. The walls were made of dark stone, carved with strange flowing patterns that seemed to shimmer faintly when the light touched them. Jake kept his eyes forward, matching the commander's pace. She didn't speak. Her movements were precise, almost too quiet for someone wearing heavy boots. That tail of hers swayed behind her, long and sleek. Like it had a mind of its own. Jake had never been this close to one of her kind before. And he noticed details that no rumor had mentioned, the faint hum of energy in the air around her, the way her scales caught tiny specks of light, and the subtle way her tail shifted direction like it could sense his presence. Finally, they stopped. She turned sharply to face him, her golden eyes locked on his. "Why were you in my sector?" Jake opened his mouth. The power lines. She stepped closer. "I did not ask for repairs." He frowned. "Without power, your water purifiers would." Her tail suddenly flicked, brushing against his knee. The contact was unexpected, almost like a warning, but Jake's reflexes betrayed him. His hand shot out, and before he realized what he was doing, he had grabbed it. It wasn't a hard pull, just enough to stop it from moving, but the effect was immediate. Her body froze, every muscle went still. Her eyes widened, not with rage, but with something else. The tail in his grip felt warm and alive, and a faint vibration pulsed through it, like the beat of a hidden heart. Jake quickly let go. "Sorry, I didn't mean." Her breathing had changed. It was slower, deeper, almost deliberate. She tilted her head slightly, studying him like he was. No longer just an intruder, but something else. "You," she said softly, but her voice carried weight. "Touched my tail." Jake raised his hands defensively. "I didn't know it was a problem." Her gaze narrowed. "A problem? Do you have any idea what that means to my kind?" He hesitated. "No?" For a moment, her lips curved into the faintest trace of a smile. But it was gone so quickly, he almost doubted he saw it. Her tail uncoiled slowly, brushing the floor, then curling toward him again. Not in anger this time, but almost curious. Outside the room, voices murmured. Some alien guards had stopped, clearly sensing something unusual. Their eyes flicked between Jake and their commander. A few of them looked shocked. One even muttered in their native tongue. And Jake caught only one translated word from the fortress AI, bond. She stepped closer until there was barely a hand's width between them. Her heightened presence made the air feel heavier. Pulling the tail of a warrior is. She paused, as if deciding whether to continue. A very old signal. Jake tried to read her face. Signal for what? Her golden eyes didn't blink. For claiming. Jake's heart skipped. Claiming. Her tail brushed his boot again. This time slower. It is not something done lightly. It is dangerous. It awakens instincts that cannot be undone. Jake swallowed. His mind spun, wondering how a simple reflex could turn into something so serious. "Look, it was just an accident," he said carefully. Her eyes softened, but there was still an edge to her tone. Accidents do not matter once the signal is given. A strange silence filled the room. He could feel the weight of her words. The way her guards stood at a respectful distance, as if they knew this moment was no longer about them. Then she did something no one in the colony had ever seen. She stepped back and bowed her head slightly. Not in submission, but in acknowledgement. "You have pulled the tail of the Serpent Empress," she said quietly. "Now you must face what follows." Jake opened his mouth to ask what that meant. But before he could speak, she turned sharply, her tail swishing once more. "Follow me," she ordered. Her voice was calm now. But there was something under it, something dangerous and electric. As they walked deeper into the fortress, Jake noticed the guards whispering. Some looked at him with awe, others with pity. He had the sinking feeling that whatever he had awakened, there was no going back. He didn't know it yet. But pulling her tail hadn't just changed how she saw him. It had sealed his place in her world, and in ways he couldn't yet. Imagine that world was about to close around him. The deeper they went into the fortress, the quieter it became. The thick stone walls blocked out the sounds of the colony outside. And soon, it felt like Jake was walking through a place cut off from the rest of the world. The commander led him into a long hall lit only by narrow beams of blue light from crystal panels above. The glow made her scales shine faintly, giving her an almost unreal presence. Jake could still feel the memory of her tail in his hand. Warm, alive, and strangely personal. She stopped suddenly, turning to face him for a long moment. She just looked at him, saying nothing. Her golden eyes were different now. They still held power and danger. But the cold fury he had seen earlier was gone, replaced by something heavier, something that made Jake's chest feel tight. Why? She asked softly. Her voice didn't have the sharp bite from before. Why what? Jake asked, unsure if this was a trap. Why did you hold my tail? She said, her tone was almost curious, like she was testing his answer. Jake hesitated. It was an accident. I was just trying to stop it from. She stepped closer. Close enough that Jake could feel the faint heat radiating from her body. Her eyes locked on his. It was no accident. Your kind does not touch without intent. Jake's mouth went dry. I didn't know it meant anything. Her gaze searched his face as if weighing his soul. Slowly, the tip of her tail brushed against his boot again, but this time it lingered there. Not in warning, but in something that felt almost like invitation. Outside the hall, a few alien guards stood still. Watching through the narrow entrance, they whispered among themselves in their own language. Their expressions tense. Jake didn't understand the words, but he could feel their surprise, as if something important was happening right in front of them. The commander tilted her head slightly. Do you know what I saw in your eyes when you looked at me? Jake shook his head. No, you were not afraid, she said simply. Her tail curled slowly behind her. Fear is what I am used to. Fear is what keeps others alive around me. But you. She paused, her voice lowering. You looked at me as though I was just a woman. Jake didn't know how to respond to that. Part of him wanted to step back, to break the intensity of the moment. But another part couldn't move. Her golden eyes held him in place for the first time. Her expression softened. The harsh lines of command eased, and her gaze seemed to see him in a new way. It wasn't the glare of a leader about to punish someone. It was something far stranger and far more dangerous. She spoke again, almost in a whisper. My people have a word for this. The moment when two warriors' eyes meet and the bond begins. I thought it was just a story. Jake frowned. A bond. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she slowly walked around him, her tail brushing lightly against his leg as she circled. Her steps were deliberate, her gaze never leaving him. By the time she stopped in front of him again, the air between them felt charged. From the moment you pulled my tail, you stepped into my world, she said. You cannot leave it now, whether you meant to or not. You have awakened something in me, and it will not go back to sleep. Jake's pulse quickened. He didn't fully understand what she meant, but he could feel the truth in her voice. From the doorway, one of the guards called something in their tongue. The commander turned her head slightly, giving a sharp command back. Whatever she said made the guard bow and retreat quickly. Leaving them alone again, Jake swallowed. What happens? Now. Her eyes narrowed, but not in anger now. You will learn what it means to touch the tail of the Serpent Empress, she said, and you will see what the bond demands of you. For a heartbeat, They stood in silence, their eyes locked. Jake had never felt more uncertain or more sure about anything in his life. The change in her gaze wasn't just a shift from fury to curiosity. It was the start of something that felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing the ground beneath you would give way, and somewhere deep inside, Jake realized. Part of him wanted to see where the fall would take him. Jake didn't sleep that night, even when he closed his eyes in the tiny, metal-walled room the miners called quarters. He could still see her golden eyes staring into his. He kept replaying every moment in the hall, the way her voice had softened, the strange way her tail had brushed against his leg, and the way she spoke about something called the bond. He told himself it was just a misunderstanding. But deep down, he knew that wasn't true. The next morning, the colony's loudspeaker crackled to life. It usually gave out work orders or warnings. But this time, the voice was different, sharp, formal, and impossible to ignore. All miners, report to their stations except Human Jake Miller. You are summoned by the commander. The entire room went silent. The few men eating breakfast froze with spoons halfway to their mouths. Someone muttered, "Summoned." "You're dead, man," another whispered. Nobody gets called to her private chambers unless it's the last thing they ever do. Jake tried to act calm, but his stomach felt heavy. He had no choice. The fortress guards were already waiting outside his door. Their armor gleamed in the morning light. They didn't speak a single word as they escorted him. The walk to her quarters felt longer than it should. The fortress corridors were wide but empty, and every sound, the clink of the guards' armor, Jake's own footsteps echoed in the still air. Finally, they stopped at a massive set of black doors carved with twisting patterns. One guard pressed his palm to a glowing panel. The doors slid open without a sound. Jake stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, warm, and unlike any part of the fortress he had seen before. Instead of stone walls, the interior was lined with deep red fabrics and faintly glowing crystal lamps. The air was thick with a strange, sweet scent that made his head feel lighter. She was there, seated on a low, curved seat that almost looked like a throne. Her posture was relaxed, but her gaze was as sharp as ever. Her tail curled loosely at her side, swaying in slow, deliberate movements. "Sit," she said, her voice calm. Jake obeyed. Lowering himself onto a cushion across from her, the silence stretched. The only sound was the faint hum of energy from the crystals around them. "You did not run," she said finally, tilting her head slightly. Jake gave a short laugh. Wouldn't have made it far. Her mouth curved, not quite into a smile. "True, but some still try." They studied each other for a moment. Jake couldn't tell if she was searching for weakness or something else entirely. Her eyes didn't have the same cold fury as the first time they met, but they held something heavier now. Focus, intent. "You know what you did," she said. Her tail moved slowly, curling into the air before settling again. Jake shook his head. "I told you, didn't you pulled the tail of a warrior." She interrupted. "That is not something that fades. It marks you, it marks me." He shifted uncomfortably. "Look, if it's an insult, I'll apologize." Her eyes narrowed. "An insult?" "No, it is far from an insult, but it is not simple either. In my people's law, such a thing is a summons of the body and the spirit, and it is answered, always." Jake's brow furrowed. "Summons. Answered how?" She leaned forward slightly, and the glow from the crystals caught the sharp angles of her face. "By trial, by proving. By standing beside the one whose tail you claimed. Whether you survive it depends on you." He stared at her. "So this is—" "What?" "A challenge." Her golden eyes locked onto his. "It is an opening, and it can only end in two ways. The bond is sealed, or the challenger is broken." Jake felt his heart beat in. His ears There was something dangerous in her tone, but not just danger, something almost like expectation. She rose from her seat, her tail trailing along the ground. "Come with me." Jake followed without a word. The air in the room seemed warmer now. He couldn't tell if it was the crystals, her presence, or the fact that he was walking straight into something he didn't understand. As they left her quarters, the guards outside avoided meeting Jake's eyes. One of them muttered in their own tongue, and Jake caught a single translated word from the Fortress AI, again chosen. He didn't know if that word made him feel better or much, much worse. The path they took was unlike any Jake had seen in the fortress before. It sloped downward, winding into the earth itself. The air grew cooler, the walls changing from stone to a smooth, black surface that reflected faint glimmers of light from strange glowing insects clinging to the ceiling. The commander walked ahead without speaking. Her tail swayed in slow, deliberate movements. Always just ahead of him, Jake had the strange feeling it was leading him as much as she was. Finally, they reached a massive door carved from a single slab of silver-colored metal. Intricate designs ran across it like veins, pulsing faintly with blue light. Two guards stood on either side, their armor darker than the rest, their faces hidden behind masks. When the commander approached, they both lowered their heads and stepped aside. She placed her palm on the metal, and it opened with a deep, resonant sound. Jake stepped in behind her. The chamber was huge, lit by floating crystals that cast soft, shifting light over the walls. In the center stood a circular platform made of black stone, etched with more of those glowing alien markings around the edges. Shallow pools of shimmering liquid reflected the light in strange age-todic patterns. Jake looked around. "What is this place?" Her voice echoed in the chamber. "This is the binding circle." He frowned. Binding? For what? She turned to face him, her golden eyes fixed on his. When a warrior's tail is pulled, the ancient law demands the bond ritual. It was once used to choose battle partners for life. It is rare now, but still sacred. Jake rubbed the back of his neck. "And what happens in this ritual?" She stepped closer, her voice low. "You stand with me. In the circle, you face whatever comes. If you endure, the bond is sealed. If you fall, the bond dies. And so do you." Jake stared at her. "You're saying I could die?" Her tail curled slowly. "Yes." He took a deep breath. "And if I survive?" Her expression didn't change, but there was a flicker in her eyes. "Then you are mine. And I am yours, by the law of my people, until death." Jake's pulse pounded in his ears. He didn't know which part of that was more dangerous, the trial itself or what came after. She gestured toward the platform. "Step onto the circle." He hesitated, but something in her gaze told him there was no turning back now. Slowly, he stepped forward. The stone was warm beneath his boots, as if it was alive. The glowing patterns on its surface brightened under his weight. She joined him. Standing opposite him, her tail slowly swaying behind her. From the pools around the edges, the shimmering liquid began to stir, rising like mist. The floating crystals above dimmed slightly, casting the chamber into a half-light that made every shadow seem alive. The commander's voice was steady. "The trial will not be physical alone. It will test your will, your mind, and your strength. Fail in one, and the circle will claim you." Before Jake could ask what that meant, the markings under their feet flared with light. A low hum filled the chamber, and the mist coiled upward. Surrounding them, the air grew heavy. Jake felt his chest tighten. His vision shifted, the chamber blurred, and suddenly he wasn't in the fortress anymore. He was standing in a vast, alien desert under a blood-red sky. The commander was still there, but her eyes now glowed brighter. "This is the first trial," she said. "You must walk beside me until we reach the horizon. No matter what tries to turn you back, Jake glanced at the endless stretch of sand. Heat shimmering in the distance. He could feel the heat on his skin, the grit under his boots. This felt real, too real. They started walking. And almost immediately, shapes began to rise from the sand. Massive, shadowy creatures with too many limbs. Their eyes burned like embers. They moved slowly at first, then faster. Circling, Jake's instincts screamed at him to stop, to turn back, but the commander kept walking. Not even glancing at the monsters. Her tail brushed his leg once, lightly. And somehow that touch kept him moving. One of the creatures lunged, sand exploding beneath it. Jake ducked, barely avoiding its claw. His breath came fast, but he forced himself forward, matching her pace. The horizon didn't seem to get closer. But the monsters began to fade, sinking back into the sand. The air cooled. The red sky softening into twilight. They stepped forward one last time, and the vision shattered. The desert vanished. And they were back in the binding circle. The markings dimmed to a steady glow. She looked at him for a long moment, her golden eyes unreadable. "You did not falter," she said quietly. "The first part is complete." Jake let out a shaky breath. "How many parts are there?" Her tail curled slowly, enough to see what you are truly made of. The circle pulsed again beneath Jake's boots. The glow spread outward like ripples in water. And the air in the chamber thickened until every breath felt heavy. The commander stood still, her golden eyes fixed on him. "The second part begins now," she said. Her voice was steady, but her tail swayed in a slow, measured rhythm. Jake's vision blurred again, and the fortress walls vanished. This time, he found himself standing in a vast black cavern, the ceiling arched high above, lined with jagged crystals that pulsed with dull red light. The ground beneath was uneven and wet, the smell of metal and stone mixing with something sharper, like blood. From the darkness ahead came a low growl, deep, heavy, and close. Jake's gut tightened. The commander stepped forward. Her voice calm but commanding. "This is the trial of the beast. It will test your courage and your will to stand beside me. If you run, the bond dies." Before Jake could respond, a shadow moved at the edge of his vision. Then another, and then. From the blackness, a creature emerged. It was massive, 4 times Jake's height. With a body like a cross between a wolf and an armored reptile, its claws scraped the stone with a screech, and its eyes burned with a sickly yellow glow. Jake's heart pounded. His instincts screamed at him to back away. But the commander didn't move. Her tail slowly curled toward him, brushing against his leg. The beast roared, the sound echoing through the cavern like thunder. It charged. The ground shaking beneath its weight, Jake dove aside just as it slammed into the spot where he had been standing. Stone cracked under the impact. Dust filled the air. The commander moved like liquid steel, stepping between Jake and the creature. She didn't strike first. She waited, her golden eyes never leaving the beast. "Stay with me," she said sharply. Jake scrambled to his feet. His hands searched for anything he could use as a weapon. His fingers closed around a jagged shard of crystal from the ground. It was sharp, heavy, and hummed faintly in his grip. The beast lunged again, jaws snapping. Jake swung the crystal, striking its snout. The creature howled and reared back, giving the commander an opening. In one swift motion, she leaped forward, her tail snapping like a whip against the beast's side. The sound was like a crack of lightning. The creature staggered, but it didn't fall. Jake didn't think, he just moved. He ducked under one of its massive arms, driving the crystal shard into the softer scales near its leg. The beast roared in pain, twisting violently now. The commander shouted. They moved together. She struck high, her tail wrapping around the beast's neck, while Jake drove the crystal deeper into its leg. The creature thrashed, its claws tearing into the stone. But slowly, its movements weakened. With one final echoing roar, the beast collapsed. Its yellow eyes dimmed, and then its body dissolved into black smoke that rose into the air and vanished. The cavern faded, and they were back in the binding circle. Both of them were breathing hard. Sweat ran down Jake's neck, his muscles burning. The commander stepped closer, her tail curled gently around his waist. Not as a weapon this time, but almost as if to steady him. "You did not run," she said. Her voice was quieter now. "You fought beside me." Jake gave a shaky laugh. Not much choice, was there? Her eyes softened, just slightly. There is always a choice. She said, "Many fail this trial. They turn away at the first sign of fear. But you." She paused. "You stepped toward it." Jake met her gaze. "Guess I'm stubborn." The corner of her mouth twitched, and for the first time since he had met her, he thought she might actually be hiding a smile. The markings beneath them pulsed once more. Brighter now, the pools of shimmering liquid around the circle began to ripple, sending soft waves of light across the walls. She stepped back, her voice steady again. "There is one more part." Jake's chest tightened, "And if I survive that," her tail swayed slowly, "then the bond will be sealed, and you will be bound to me until the stars themselves burn out." Jake swallowed hard. His mind was already racing with what that could mean. But deep down, he knew whatever this final trial was, he wasn't going to walk away from it. And maybe he didn't want to. The binding circle was glowing brighter now. The markings beneath Jake's boots pulsed like a living heartbeat, and the pools of shimmering liquid rippled without wind. The air had changed. It was warmer, heavier, as if the whole chamber was holding its breath. The commander stood before him, her golden eyes fixed on his. Her tail swayed slowly, not in threat this time, but in a rhythm that felt almost hypnotic. "This is the last part," she said. Her voice was lower than before, steady but carrying something deeper. "The trial of the bond. If you pass, there will be no turning back. You will be mine, and I will be yours. Until death or beyond." Jake swallowed. "And if I fail?" Her gaze didn't waver. "Then the bond dies. And so do you." The words hung in the air like a blade. But Jake didn't step back. He just nodded. "Then let's finish this." She stepped closer, her tail brushing his side as she passed him. The moment her foot touched the center of the circle, the lights surged upward, surrounding them both in a column of shifting blue and gold. Jake's vision blurred again, but this time it wasn't a place of danger or battle. It was somewhere else. They stood on a cliff under a night sky filled with 2 moons and a river of stars. The wind was cool, carrying the faint sound of distant drums. The ground beneath them was soft with moss, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The commander turned to him, but now she wasn't wearing her armor. Her scaled shoulders were bare, her mane of dark hair flowing in the wind. The golden light in her eyes was softer, but no less intense. "This trial is not of the body," she said. "It is of the spirit. You must look into me, into everything I am, and not turn away." Jake frowned. "That's it. Just look at you." She stepped forward, her tail curling gently around his arm. "You will see my past, my battles, my pain, and the parts of me I have never shown anyone. If you cannot bear it, the bond will shatter, and so will you." Before Jake could reply, her hand touched his chest, and the world rushed into him. He saw flashes, battles under crimson skies. The commander standing alone against an army, her tail striking like lightning. The faces of warriors who had fought beside her and fallen. He saw her as a youngling, training in the cold rain until her hands bled. He felt the crushing loneliness of command, the weight of responsibility that no one else could carry. He saw her victories and the hollow silence that followed them, and then he saw something else, something raw, buried deep, a quiet longing. A need she had hidden for years, the longing for someone who would not fear her, who would stand beside her without being ordered to. Jake's chest tightened. The images faded. And they were back on the glowing moss beneath the twin moons. The commander's eyes searched his face. "You see me now?" she said. "All of me. Do you turn away?" Jake didn't move. His voice was steady. "No." Her tail tightened slightly around his arm. "You are certain." He stepped closer, meeting her gaze without flinching. "I'm certain." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she reached up, her hand brushing the side of his face. Then the bond awakens. The ground beneath them glowed brighter, and the light surged up around their bodies. It wasn't blinding, it was warm, like sunlight through closed eyes. Jake felt something deep in his chest, a strange pull, like a heartbeat syncing with hers. When the light faded, they were back in the binding circle, but something had changed. Jake could feel it, like an invisible thread now connected them. He could sense her presence, her heartbeat. Even the faint shift in her breathing. The commander stepped close, her tail curling fully around his waist now. Her voice was quiet, but it carried across the chamber. "From this moment, you are mine and I am yours. No one may challenge it." Jake met her gaze. "Guess I'll have to get used to that." Her golden eyes softened. "You will." The guards outside the circle bowed low, their voices echoing. A single word, bonded. And as Jake stood there, still catching his breath, he realized that this wasn't just survival anymore. He had stepped into her world, and now he belonged there.